Hello, I'm St. Flynn. Welcome to the Houston Chamber Choir's With One Accord Behind the Music podcast. The 29th season for the Houston Chamber Choir begins on October 7th at South Main Baptist Church here in Houston with a program entitled The Joyful Mysteries. And to talk about that program, I'm joined by the founder and artistic director of the Houston Chamber Choir, that's Bob Simpson.
Hi, Simpson.
And our featured composer for this program, Daniel Knaggs. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
'29th season, Robert?
Hard to believe.
Hard to believe. The Joyful Mysteries. Give us a swift sort of introduction as to what this program entails.
Well, the program is the world premiere of another wonderful piece by Daniel Knaggs, who is one of our all-time favorite composers and people to work with. We have performed a number of pieces by Daniel. Most recently, we recorded the Two Streams CD that will be coming out in November. And so when Daniel came to me and said, I'm writing a work and I really care about this piece, it's a special piece to me and I want you to be a part of it, I felt really honored. And we cleared the deck so that we could do this piece the justice that it deserves. And I thought that it would be not only fitting for us to have a chance to perform this piece, but also to be a partner with our downtown Houston companion church, Holy Rosary, as the commissioner of this piece, to perform it there on Friday night, and then open our season with it on Saturday.
Now, Daniel's piece is titled The Joyful Mysteries. And the Joyful Mysteries, certainly within Catholic spirituality, is tied to the Rosary. And I guess that's a tie into the Holy Rosary Church. So talk about that. How did that come about? The church commissioning the piece and the Houston Chamber Choir premiering that piece.
Well, if I may, I think Daniel would be much more able to answer that completely. So
Yeah, happy to help in that way. But yes, it actually happened in the audience of Two Streams, I think 2 years ago, when Houston Chamber Choir gave the premiere of that work. There was a pastor, the then pastor of Holy Rosary, Father Peter Damien, sitting in the audience, and someone sort of challenged him, saying, "No, we're going to let Annunciation or whoever have all these commissions and whatever." And this pastor said, "No, I will not allow that." I got a phone call soon after that saying, "We'd like to commission something, basically whatever you want to do." They threw around the idea of maybe like a 3 or 4 minute piece, which didn't interest me too much because I usually try to bite off more than I can chew. But this idea came, I thought, well, it's for the patronal feast of Holy Rosary, and why don't we do something about the Rosary? And so that's when this idea began to have a 4 choral symphony project. This is number 1 of 4. There are 4 sets of mysteries. This is the joyful. And so I pitched the idea. Father said, "Yep, sure, let's do it." So we moved ahead with it. And then, of course, I did want this to be performed at the highest level possible. A lot of work was going into it. And there was really no one else for me to go to other than my beloved Houston Chamber Choir. I asked Bob about it. So I was really excited that this would fit in their season this year. And yeah, I couldn't be happier with that.
This is not the first time that the choir has performed Daniel's music.
Not at all.
There is a tie-in between the Joyful Mysteries that is about to be premiered and another of your composing projects, which is the Ave Maria project. And the choir has performed, I think, number 12 of the...
We have done several of them, but it is interesting that you have a series of mysteries, and because you've also set yourself a mighty task with Ave Marias.
Yes, so actually, just to be completely honest, I'm really running behind for this year's Ave Maria, but that's partly because of pouring myself into this almost hour-long work with 5 movements. But yes, it's a 50-year project. I write a new opera every year. This year is 19. If I can, before December 31st, finish the 19th one. But yes, the Houston Chamber Choir gave the American premiere, the U.S. premiere, last December of number 18. It was in Ukraine, and they did an amazing job with that too. So, yeah.
So the Joyful Mysteries, you've already let the cat out of the bag. It's a choral symphony.
That's right.
So what forces are involved here? Obviously, there is a choir, the Houston Chamber Choir, but in terms of instrumentation, there are soloists as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have soloists, and really, I think I learned quite a bit in 2 streams. I loved working with Kinetic. The string orchestra really enhanced the timbral palette. But actually, in this choral symphony, it's taken a few notches higher. So we have a lot more color to play with. It's chamber orchestra, 26, actually technically 27 players are going to be in the orchestra this time. Kinetic is joining us again as the strings. And then Monarch Chamber Players is forming the winds, brass, and percussion and harp that we'll have with us. So this, on top of the roles of the soloists, everyone's going to be kind of sharing the load more or less equally, actually, throughout the basically hour-long duration of the piece.
And there are 4 soloists as a soprano, a mezzo, a bass baritone, and a voice soprano.
That's correct. Yeah.
So why do you need soloists if you've got a choir?
That is a wonderful question. And I've asked myself the same thing. The first time I addressed this issue was in 2 streams Bob and I were talking about. We knew without a doubt there would be 1 singer per solo in the Houston Chamber Choir, but the idea to just let them focus on the choral part and find other soloists was helpful. But why, in general, using solo voice? There is an expressivity that a solo voice can do, an immediacy that a solo vocalist can communicate that's somewhat different, not necessarily better, but somewhat different, more individual that each of the soloists can express. So the choir, for me, is always the best of both worlds. This ability to express, but there's almost an orchestral quality to the choir as well, where all these voices become like one voice. And the sum of their parts is always so much greater than just how many people there are there, right? But the soloist is a nice contrast to the tutti, or the larger ensemble, almost like I play a lot with this kind of concerto grosso idea, where there's this competition, quote unquote, between voices. So you get to hear like a violin concerto, solo violinist playing, and then the entire orchestra comes in, and it's really fun for the ears to be able to differentiate between these levels of sound and colors and combinations. So it just adds variety and color, I think.
I agree with everything that Daniel said, but there's also a practical nature, because Daniel has used the biblical narrative of the Annunciation through the boy Jesus being taken to the temple by his family when he's 12. And there are individual characters in this story, starting with Gabriel announcing to Mary that she will bear the Son of God, and Mary's response, and then Mary's cousin Elizabeth, and Simeon in the temple who's been told by God that he will not die until he has seen the Lord. So he has seen Jesus, the Son of God. And that famous passage, "Now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace," that Simeon recognizes in Jesus, the Son of God. And then Jesus himself as a boy of 12. So there is a very practical reason to have the soloists to tell the narrative, to tell the story, and they're beautifully integrated with choral and instrumental writing.
Let's talk a little bit about the joyful mysteries in terms of the Rosary. There are 4 categories of mysteries, as you said.
That's right.
There's the joyful, the sorrowful, the glorious, and the luminous.
There you go.
And within each of those, there are 5
Mysteries.
events. 5.
Sure. Yeah.
So here, for the joyful mysteries, we have the Annunciation, we have the Visitation, we have the birth, the presentation of Jesus in the temple, immediately after his birth, and then the finding of Jesus in the temple when he was 12. You make a very interesting point in your program notes about these joyful mysteries. Let me just quote what you say. The Joyful Mysteries explores the Rosary's 5 mysteries of joy, events that, notwithstanding, all take place in a context of fear, sorrow, or suffering. This intermingling of joy with sorrow can seem paradoxical at first glance. After all, doesn't joy imply an absence of sorrow? Calling each of these 5 events a mystery approaches the heart of the matter. And I think what I find fascinating is what you say. These are events of joy, but they are born out of and they are tied to events of sorrow as well. And you can't separate those things out, can you? And then that's where the idea of mystery comes in, I guess.
Yeah, just my idea, I think I kind of discovered it along the way, but it wasn't to sort of portray the mysteries as if they were, hyped up on antidepressants or something, and everything is just so happy all the time. Starts happy, ends happy, but I think it becomes pretty clear in each of these. The fear, even when, we often hear Simeon's canticle out of context, but this one's kind of in context where you know the story that's happening, and along with what he says that's so familiar, he looks right at the Blessed Mother and says, and a sword will pierce your own soul, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed. So all of these things happen. Not only is there fear and anxiety when the shepherds are seeing the angels appear, Mary is confused and afraid. Is she going to be divorced quietly or whatever because of becoming pregnant without a husband? All of these things, all 5 of mysteries actually, even the very joyful finding of the Christ child in the temple. That mystery isn't even possible unless he's first lost and the family is trying to find out in the caravan, where is he? So there's a lot of sadness and sorrow, and it never gets the last word though. That's the thing that I think is the takeaway, that the sorrow and the fear is going to come and go, but it never gets the last word. It's the joy that is enduring and deeper than any of the sorrow that they encounter. So,
well, you can't have joy without sorrow, can you? Because they define each other. Mm-hmm. You've also used beyond the gospel texts. You've also used words of Hildegard of Bingen and Bernard of Clairvaux, both 12th century luminaries, if you like. What is it that their words bring to your work?
I love both of what they come to offer this piece, but they are contemporaries of each other. I think 1100s, and amazing both in their own right. But I look at Hildegard as really conveying a lot of this mystical, deeper, joyful side of things. Her speech is very elevated and really, I would say, just super luminous and elevated. And then Bernard is a lot more of this immediacy and from heart to heart. He brings a lot of human warmth to these things. So I see the 2 of them adding so much that Bernard's words I mostly give to the soloists, that personal touch, and then it's Hildegard's words are too great to be just words alone, and I often give them to the amazing Houston Chamber Choir. Why? Because it's almost not enough to just have one person singing Hildegard's words. So you need to have the breaking out into these dimensions that are beyond just the solo line, I would say.
So when you sat down to begin to think about this work, what were your thought processes? Did you have an idea already of what you wanted to do, or did you have to sit down and think, okay, what the heck am I going to do?
Yeah, it's more of that. More of that than anything. Yeah.
So how do you get from there to the construction of the joyful mysteries that we're about to hear?
Yeah, it's interesting because every piece has a different, unique process. And this one mostly consisted of, okay, I know the structure it's already set out for me to some extent. I know that I have 5 mysteries to portray. So how am I going to do this? How much time am I going to spend on each of these? And played around for about 1 month with just the libretto considerations. I collected a lot more than I would ever want to use and kept making cuts and organizing and copy paste to the kind of a puzzle. But once I had the text, I kind of knew that it would work itself out. And so once the text was there and I was able to sit down and really start trying to compose, I probably threw everything away for a week or 2 at the very beginning, which usually happens with any piece. But once I had the germinal ideas, I just had to trust that it'll grow and flourish and blossom into what it's meant to be. So you don't think too much about, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You just sort of ride along and just trust. It's very instinctual. It's very intuitive. And I think, it's crazy to think that eventually I put a double bar at the end, and I was, wow, where did all this time go? So,
how do you know when a piece is finished, or is it ever finished?
that is again, that's more your second statement is more of where I'm coming from, because I've gone back and forth a lot about the ending of this piece. And Bob was running cover for me. It's like he often knows what I want to do. He just intuits it. I was hearing the rehearsal on Monday. I was a little self-conscious about the ending just seeming too abrupt. But part of my idea was I did not want this to be the most grandiose ending. I want to actually save that for the Glorious Mysteries, the 4th symphony. I want that to outshine all of them so that it could be more conclusive. But Bob was able to intuit that, okay, we need a little bit more time here. It can't be just rushed into the simple crash, whatever. Like, you have to kind of ease into it a little bit. And I didn't have to say a word about it, but Bob did that. So actually, now that Bob put his touch on it, I feel a little better about it. But I think, there comes a time when you just got to land the plane. And that's where I ended up with this piece. I said everything I wanted to say, and I knew I don't want to shortchange anyone, but I also don't want it to be the most extraordinary ending that you've ever had. There should be joy. There should be conclusive, but not exactly how I'm looking in the Glorious, the 4th symphony to come. So,
why do you choose to call this a symphony?
That is a great question too. I chose to call it a symphony because it is grand scale. So, and I think I'm okay with it because I know how many staves are involved. I know how many days and hours, and I know that the subject matter itself too is very deep and very meaningful to me. And I think that the best way to convey this is that it is a choral symphony. So it's not just a symphony, which would almost imply that there are no singers involved, but a choral symphony. So I could be persuaded otherwise, but that's kind of where I ended up.
We've mentioned your Ave Maria project, and here with the Joyful Mysteries. Each of those 5 events is tied very much to Mary. What is it that you find in Mary, in the Virgin Mary, the Mother of Jesus, the Mother of God? What is it that you find so that makes her such a deep well for you to draw from inspiration-wise?
That's a great question. And I will just say, in the Joyful Mysteries, Mary is very much tied to each of the mysteries, but then once you start moving into the luminous and in the sorrowful, and there are less obvious, at least immediate connections. So, but in terms of your question, with the Ave Marias and Marian works that I've composed, I think I've always felt a connection ever since I was a child. And maybe you are prepared for this by your own relationship with your own mother, but this idea that really she's not just the mother of God, but that Christ gives her to all people, a mother of all people, and one who is loving and able to help and we say intercede and so forth. So I find a lot of that universal appeal to a mother, that no matter what situation we've grown up in or whatever, we do have a mother for too. So.
Now, this all sounds very, very deep, profound, and ponderous. But when you first got the final score from Daniel, and you took a look at it, what was your initial reaction?
Well, it is deep and it is probing, and and any significant work of art should strive for that. I'm looking over my shoulder to a poster that I've had for a number of years. It was given to me by the great Robert Shaw in Atlanta. At that time, he was director of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, and their tagline back in that season was, "Great music is great entertainment." I think if you read War and Peace, it is fundamentally an entertainment, something that you can lose yourself in. And so as we talk about the theological profundities and all of the things that have gone behind the scenes, I want to just tell our audience that when you come and you experience this, you're going to have a very rich emotional response. The orchestrations, I think your gift for orchestration is right up there with Rimsky-Korsakov. And you have, there are cinematic moments, there are the tinkling of a triangle at just the right moment, or another stroke of woodwinds or brass coming into highlight that just make you feel that you're in a world of color. And the theological significance is unquestioned, but there's also a very, very vibrant immediacy that this piece will go by very quickly. It's times in 55 minutes, but in my estimation, people will sit down, start to listen, and they'll be shocked that 55 minutes has sped by so quickly because it's so involving at every minute.
So there are two words here, joyful and mysteries. So musically, I assume that this is a huge expression of joy. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, fundamentally, it is the quintessential mixed message. The joy is there, but it's not giddy joy. It's deep understanding that something of immense importance is going on. And Daniel has taken that text very much to heart. His music is not frivolous. It's not ponderous. It just meets, just as great choral music should, it meets the texts on its own terms and gives a sense of platform for the words to take on even greater significance than were they to be spoken. And that's one of the great hallmarks of great choral music, is to start with a great text and then allow it to live in the form of notes and phrases that heighten the expression of both. And Daniel has done that.
I just want to say too, like, there are a few spots that I should prepare people for because they're very fun and they're not what you would necessarily expect. There's some of these are just cute winks or something in the orchestration. But one big one is, and I had to question myself on it a little bit, is in the third movement, when the angels come and all of them are singing this glory to God in the highest, Gloria in excelsis Deo. It's probably not this ethereal, heavenly, hallmark version of the angels. It's quite, I don't want to say tongue-in-cheek, but it's making it seem like these angels have some real personality and that they are enjoying themselves, even though these people are like, what's going on here? We're not used to seeing this kind of display. So there are some really fun moments as well, and playful moments in the joy, right? Even though the joy is still grounded and not like a shallow giddiness, as Bob was saying, but there are these moments where it's like, wow, yeah, okay. I wasn't even sure that that's what I thought the angels would sound like, but I think it's actually fair to give them a maybe slight sense of humor, a little bit of personality. So trying that out anyway. We'll see how it works.
Well, the Houston Chamber Choir opens its season with the Joyful Mysteries, Saturday, October 7th, 7:30 p.m. at South Main Baptist Church here in Houston. Robert Simpson and Daniel Knaggs, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.